Sometimes I talk to people who feel like they've been living the same year over and over again. Different jobs, different relationships, maybe even a new city, but deep down, it feels like nothing has actually changed. You wake up, you try something new, it falls apart, you start again, and somehow you always end up in the same emotional place. It's like life keeps looping back to the same starting point. Maybe it's a cycle of burnout. Maybe it's a cycle of anxiety. Maybe it's the same kind of relationship with a different person's face. Whatever the details, the pattern feels endless. And at some point, you start to wonder, am I broken? Why can't I move on? But here are what I've learned after working with thousands of people. You're not broken. You're repeating what's familiar. The human brain doesn't chase happiness, it chases predictability. It prefers the pain it knows over the uncertainty it doesn't. So even if your logical mind says, I want to change, a deeper, older part of you says, but at least I know how this pain works. That's the prison of repetition. We don't to realize we re-addicted to our own patterns until they've V-shaped our lives. When I was younger, I used to think that growth was about finding the right motivation or setting better goals. But I've come to understand that growth starts when you stop trying to fix the surface and start asking deeper questions. What emotion is this cycle protecting me from? What part of me still believes I deserve this? What am I afraid will happen if I truly change? Because every cycle you're stuck in, whether it's self-sabotage, avoidance, or emotional chaos, has a purpose. It's not random. It's your nervous system trying to keep you safe, even if it's doing it in a destructive way. If you always end up in relationships that leave you feeling unseen, maybe your brain learned early on that love equals inconsistency, and now that feels normal. If you keep procrastinating, maybe failure is less scary than success, because success would mean you finally have to stop hiding. And I think one of the hardest things about breaking free from these loops is that the mind convinces you they're temporary. You'll say, next time I'll do better, or once this job ends, things will be different. But unless you understand the deeper mechanism, you'll just replay the same movie with new scenery. So let us talk about what is actually happening beneath the surface when you re-trapped in a cycle. Imagine that your life is a combination of two systems, your conscious mind and your emotional memory. Your conscious mind says, I want to change, but your emotional memory says, this is who I am. And those two are not the same. The emotional memory isn't logical. It's encoded in your body, your reactions, your sense of safety. That's why you can read 1,000 self-help books, watch every motivational video, and still end up back in the same patterns. Because you're trying to change with logic what was built by emotion. Let's say you grew up in an environment where love was unpredictable, sometimes nurturing, sometimes cold. Your body learned that love is inconsistent. Now, even as an adult, when you meet someone who gives you steady love, it feels suspicious. You'll subconsciously sabotage it. You'll pick fights, withdraw, or lose attraction. Not because you want pain, but because your body's version of normal is chaos. So you keep looping back, not out of stupidity, but out of survival. The brain isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to repeat what it knows how to survive. Breaking that cycle starts with awareness. And not intellectual awareness, emotional awareness. You have to actually feel the discomfort of your pattern instead of explaining it away. If you always feel empty after achieving something, don't rush to set a new goal. Sit in the emptiness. Ask yourself, what does this feeling remind me of? When did I first learn that achievement equals love? Because that's where the loop began. So many of us live like emotional archaeologists, digging through the same ruins over and over, hoping to find something new without ever leaving the site. But healing doesn't come from more analysis. It comes from allowing your nervous system to experience safety in a new pattern. That's why growth feels so awkward at first. You're not just changing habits. You're teaching your body that peace isn't danger. I once worked with someone who kept ending up in jobs where they felt overworked and undervalued. No matter how many times they switched companies, the same dynamic followed them. When we dug deeper, we realized they grew up with a parent whose love had to be earned through achievement. Their nervous system associated effort with worthiness. So even when they consciously wanted balance, their body pushed them to overperform. Because resting felt like rejection. The moment they stopped performing, they felt worthless. So, of course, every new job turned into the same cycle. The only way out wasn't to find the right job, it was to rewire what effort meant in their body. That's the kind of transformation that actually breaks cycles, not external changes, but internal reprogramming. And it doesn't happen overnight. The brain doesn't trust peace immediately. You have to expose it slowly, like sunlight on skin that's been covered for too long. At first, it burns. But with time, it warms. A lot of people misunderstand what breaking free really means. They think it means you'll never fall back into old habits again. That's not true. You'll still slip. You'll still get triggered. But instead of living in the cycle unconsciously, you'll start noticing it as it happens. That awareness is the first taste of freedom. You stop identifying with the pattern. You stop saying, I'm a failure, and instead you say, oh, I'm running my failure program again. That shift from identification to observation is huge. It's what meditation, therapy, and introspection all aim to build. And here's something that might surprise you. The cycle isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. Every time it repeats, it's offering you another chance to choose differently. That's why some of the kindest, wisest people you'll ever meet are the ones who best suffered through the same patterns again and again until they finally learn from them. Pain, when faced with honesty, transforms into wisdom. The problem is most of us don't face it. We escape it. We distract ourselves with work, with screens, with substances, with relationships that keep us from being alone with ourselves. Because stillness reveals the truth we're afraid to see, that we've built a life around avoiding our wounds. But that avoidance is the very fuel that keeps the cycles alive. You can't heal what you refuse to feel. Sometimes the hardest part of breaking free, into taking action, is staying still long enough to see what's really going on. You have to sit in the discomfort, in the craving to distract yourself and ask, what am I trying not to feel right now? That's where healing begins. The mind will resist. It'll tell you it's pointless, it's boring, it's too much. But if you can stay with that discomfort, even for a few minutes, you'll start to notice something miraculous. It passes. And every time you survive that wave of discomfort, you rewire your brain to believe that you can handle it. That's how you reclaim your power. The truth is, most people don't need more information. They need more capacity to feel. Because emotional avoidance is what keeps the cycles spinning. You can't think your way out of what your nervous system learned through experience. You have to feel your way out. You have to let the emotion complete its process instead of freezing it with distraction. And I think that's where compassion becomes critical. You can't hate yourself into change. You can't shame yourself out of your patterns. Every time you fall back, you have to respond with curiosity, not judgment. Ask, what is this teaching me about what I still haven't healed? Instead of, why am I still like this? That's how the loop loosens. You stop feeding it with self-criticism. There's a phrase I often share, awareness without compassion is torture. Because once you see your pattern clearly, you can easily start hating yourself for it. But awareness with compassion is liberation. It's when you finally say, yes, I see this part of me and I understand why it's here. That understanding allows transformation to happen organically. You stop fighting your inner child. You start parenting them. Breaking free isn't about erasing the past. It's about integrating it. The goal isn't to become someone new, it's to become someone whole. Every loop you've ever been stuck in was trying to bring you back to an unhealed part of yourself. When you finally turn toward that part with compassion, the cycle has served its purpose. It doesn't need to repeat anymore. And when that happens, something beautiful emerges. Stillness. Not the numb kind, but the peaceful kind. For the first time, life stops feeling like a treadmill. You start waking up with a quiet sense of groundedness. Not every day, not perfectly, but often enough to know you're changing. That's what freedom feels like, not the absence of problems, but the absence of compulsion. You know what I've noticed about people who finally start to break their cycles? It doesn't happen because they suddenly figure it all out. It happens because they finally stop running from themselves. There's this moment where you just get tired of blaming others. Tired of waiting for something external to fix it. Tired of pretending you don't see the same patterns repeating. It's not dramatic, it's quiet. You just stop running. That's where real transformation begins. Because when you stop running, all the emotions you've been avoiding finally catch up with you. The sadness, the anger, the shame, the fear, they all arrive like old ghosts asking to be seen. And at first, it feels overwhelming. You think, if I let this out, it'll destroy me. But it doesn't. It softens you. Because what destroys you isn't the emotion, it's the resistance to it. Most people live like pressure cookers. Every emotion they suppress adds more pressure until the smallest trigger causes an explosion. That's why you might cry uncontrollably after something minor or lash out at someone who didn't deserve it. It's not about that one event, it's the accumulated pain finally finding an exit. And here are something you need to understand. Emotions don't just disappear because you ignore them. They get stored in your body. That's why some people have chronic tension, fatigue, stomach issues, or panic attacks without understanding why. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. You can't outthink trauma, you have to outfeel it. So when I tell people to feel, it's not a metaphor. I literally mean sit with the emotion in your body. Notice where it lives. Maybe anxiety feels like tightness in your chest, or shame feels like heat in your face. Instead of labeling it as bad, just observe it. The moment you stop fighting it, the emotion starts to move. It's like unfreezing a river that's been locked in ice for years. But here's the challenge. When you start doing this, your mind will panic. It'll say, this is useless, this is stupid. I need to fix this, not feel it. That's just the defense mechanism talking. The mind's job is to solve problems. But emotions aren't problems, they're processes. You can't solve sadness like an equation. You have to let it complete its natural cycle. When it does, your body learns that it's safe to feel again. That's what resets the nervous system. Think about how children process emotions. A child cries, shakes, breathes heavily, and then 5 minutes later, they're fine. The emotion completes. But as adults, we interrupt that process. We tell ourselves, don't cry, don't be weak. Don't make a scene. We tighten our bodies, we suppress the tears, and that energy gets trapped. Over time, we become emotionally constipated. We look calm on the outside but carry chaos inside. So breaking free from life cycles requires reclaiming your emotional range. It's learning to feel again without judgment. Because every pattern you restuck in is built around an emotion you haven't fully faced. Avoidance is the fuel that keeps the loop spinning. Let's take an example. You always end up dating emotionally unavailable people. Consciously, you tell yourself you want love, but unconsciously, you choose people who can't give it. Why? Because being truly seen feels unsafe. Maybe growing up, love came with criticism or control, so your brain associates intimacy with danger. The cycle repeats because your body still thinks safety means distance. The moment you meet someone who actually sees you, your body panics. It thinks you're losing control. That panic isn't the truth. It's a memory. So how do you break that? You don't force yourself to love differently right away. You start by noticing the panic without obeying it. You breathe. You remind yourself, this is just my old wiring. You practice staying with the feeling of vulnerability until your body learns that love doesn't have to mean danger anymore. That's real healing when your nervous system updates its definition of safety. Sometimes I think healing is less about becoming someone new and more about unlearning who you had to be to survive. You don't have to destroy your old self, you have to rescue them. Because every defense mechanism, perfectionism, withdrawal, people-pleasing was born to protect you at a time when you didn't have better tools. When you start to see those parts with compassion, something shifts. The inner war ends. You stop treating your mind like an enemy and start listening to it like a scared child. And it's interesting, once you begin to integrate those parts, life starts changing on its own. You make different choices, not because you're trying to, but because you don't resonate with the old patterns anymore. You naturally outgrow them. Growth stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like alignment. Now, let's talk about something subtle but important: identity. Many people stay stuck because their identity is built around their pain. If you've been anxious your whole life, being calm feels unfamiliar. If you've always seen yourself as a struggler, success feels threatening. It's strange, but peace can feel uncomfortable when chaos has been your normal. That's why people often relapse into old patterns after progress. They don't know who they are without the struggle. So part of breaking free is grieving your old self. You have to say goodbye to the version of you who lived in survival mode. That version got you here. They fought, they endured, they adapted, but they don't need to run the show anymore. Gratitude allows you to release them without shame. You don't erase them, you thank them. That's how you make space for the next version of you to emerge. And maybe that's what makes healing so painful. It's not just about changing habits, it's about losing an identity. It's a kind of death. But every death makes room for rebirth. The discomfort you feel in transition isn't failure, it's the birth canal of transformation. Let's be honest, this process isn't linear. You'll have days where you feel enlightened, and days where you feel like you've regressed completely. That's normal. Healing happens in spirals, not straight lines. You revisit old wounds from deeper levels of awareness each time. So, when you relapse into an old pattern, instead of saying, "I'm back where I started," ask, "What am I seeing now that I couldn't see before?" And that's growth. I've seen people change their entire lives simply by changing how they relate to failure. Instead of seeing it as proof that they're broken, they start seeing it as feedback. Every fall teaches you something about the terrain. Every repetition shows you another layer of what needs healing. When you stop judging the cycle, you start learning from it. That's how you evolve. And maybe the most liberating realization of all is that you don't have to fix everything right now. You don't have to solve your entire life in 1 week. You just need to take one honest step toward yourself. Healing isn't about doing more, it's about being more present. If you can meet yourself with honesty and compassion, even for 5 minutes a day, that's progress. Because the truth is, freedom doesn't come from escaping the cycle, it comes from seeing that the door was never locked. You were free all along. You just didn't trust yourself enough to walk out. The patterns that trap you only exist as long as you believe they define you. Once you see them clearly, they lose their power. So, if you're stuck right now, I want you to try something simple. Don't ask, "How do I fix my life?" Ask, "What am I feeling that I don't want to feel?" That question will lead you to the root. Then, instead of running, breathe. Stay with it. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if you cry, even if nothing seems to change, stay. Every second you stay, you're teaching your brain that you're safe now. That's how cycles end, not with force, but with presence. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing. Just sit there and feel. Because that nothing is actually everything you've been avoiding your whole life. When you face it, you reclaim yourself.